What drives a person to commit murder? Is it desperation, a belief in one's superiority, or simply madness? Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment dives deep into these haunting questions, exploring the thin line between morality and immorality, guilt and redemption. Today, we're unraveling the psychological depth behind this classic novel and what it tells us about the human condition. Crime and Punishment, published in 1866, is a masterpiece of Russian literature, and its central character, Rodion Raskolnikov, has become one of the most intriguing figures in literary history. At its core, this is a story about crime, specifically murder. But more than that, it's an exploration of the criminal mind, guilt, and the search for redemption. The novel is set in the oppressive, poverty-stricken streets of St. Petersburg. Raskolnikov, a former student turned destitute, is faced with extreme financial hardship. His frustration and desperation lead him to develop a dangerous theory that certain people are so extraordinary that they have the right to transcend ordinary moral laws. Raskolnikov's belief that extraordinary individuals have the right to commit crimes for the greater good is a key psychological theme in the novel. He believes that men like Napoleon can kill without remorse because their acts lead to a greater purpose for humanity. Raskolnikov sees himself as such a man. This idea leads him to commit the murder of an old pawnbroker. He justifies it by reasoning that she is a louse, someone whose death would improve society, as her wealth could be redistributed to better causes. But here's where the real psychological depth of the novel begins. Was this murder really about ideology, or was it something more personal? Once the crime is committed, Raskolnikov is immediately overcome by guilt. But Dostoevsky doesn't portray this as simple remorse. Instead, it's a slow, agonizing descent into madness. He experiences hallucinations, fevered dreams, and a growing paranoia. His internal conflict eats away at him. He's torn between his belief in his own superiority and the overwhelming weight of his conscience. This is one of Dostoevsky's greatest achievements, the portrayal of guilt not as a moral reckoning, but as a psychological disintegration. Guilt manifests not just in Raskolnikov's mind, but in his body. His physical illness mirrors his mental torment. While Raskolnikov spirals into despair, he encounters a key figure, Sonya Marmeladova. She is a poor, self-sacrificing young woman, forced into prostitution to support her family. Despite her suffering, Sonya represents hope and spiritual redemption. She's a stark contrast to Raskolnikov's cold rationalism, embodying unconditional love and faith. Through Sonya, Dostoevsky explores the idea of salvation through suffering. Raskolnikov is drawn to her, even though he initially rejects her Christian faith. But it's her influence that ultimately leads him to confess his crime, not because he fully believes in her worldview, but because he can no longer bear the weight of his guilt. Crime and Punishment is more than just a story about murder. It's a profound exploration of morality and nihilism. Raskolnikov's belief in the extraordinary man theory is a reflection of the growing nihilistic tendencies in 19th century Russia. He rejects conventional morality, but what Dostoevsky shows is that such a rejection leads not to freedom, but to spiritual imprisonment. Throughout the novel, Raskolnikov is trapped by his thoughts, his actions, and his inability to escape the consequences of his crime. Dostoevsky's message is clear. Even if you reject moral laws, you cannot escape your conscience. The novel's title itself, Crime and Punishment, refers to both the literal punishment of the law and the internal punishment of the mind. Raskolnikov suffers not just from external forces, the fear of being caught, but from the relentless torment of his own conscience. His punishment begins the moment he commits the crime, and it continues throughout the novel. What Dostoevsky brilliantly demonstrates is that the true punishment for crime is psychological. It's not just about legal consequences, it's about the deep, personal suffering that comes with violating one's own moral code. Crime and Punishment is a novel that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. our capacity for evil, our desire for power, and the inevitable guilt that follows. Dostoevsky doesn't provide easy answers, but he offers a path: redemption through suffering and love. In the end, Raskolnikov's journey is not just about crime, but about finding his humanity once again. And that's what makes this novel a timeless psychological masterpiece. If you haven't read Crime and Punishment yet, or if it's been a while, I highly recommend diving into its dark, yet deeply insightful pages. It's a novel that will stay with you long after you've closed the book.